I want to introduce a few people that are important who put this whole event together. We have Columbia River Neighborhood Association and Old Evergreen Highway Neighborhood Association. And I'd like to just introduce the members of each. Heidi and I'm Doe Jackson.
You need to eat the mic.
Yeah, you need to put it up to your mouth.
Oh, okay, sorry, better?
Yes.
All right.
I was
trying. I'm Doe Jackson, and I'm co-chair of Old Evergreen Highway Neighborhood Association, and Heidi Marshall co-chairs with me. And great teamwork here. And I have, now I'll get some of this group too. And then Winona Purchase is our secretary, and she's checking people in. And Linda Hagelin is our, there she is. Linda Hagelin is our treasurer back there. And I'll let Heidi introduce her leader team.
Or Serena.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Hello. So we are Columbia River Neighborhood Association, and to set the boundaries, does everyone know which neighborhood association you're in? Okay. We are, our neighborhood association starts at the boundary at 192nd between Camas and Vancouver along Evergreen Highway, and we end at Silver Springs Drive, okay, on Evergreen Highway. And then at Silver Springs Drive on down to,
It is,
Rivercrest?
no, Crystal Springs. I should know that.
okay, well, anyway, down.
It's just beside the fish hatchery.
Just beside the fish hatchery, but you know, beyond that, and you end at which location? Where do you
It
end?
ends at,
She's counting streets.
I'm
Yes.
counting streets,
Okay,
but it's just beyond 78th Avenue.
okay, do you hear that? Beyond 78th Avenue, for people that know, so you know between. So that means we join each other. So Evergreen Highway from the boundary of the city going west, okay? So, and then all those neighbors and people live along Evergreen Highway. So I'm Serena Lucy, I'm the chair, and this is our treasurer, Carol Terrell, and this is our secretary. Over here is Janet Woodville. Okay, so that's who represents us. So we're thankful of you for coming, and we want to get started on our agenda. All of you got your postcard in the mail, right? And first up, we're going to have the people, please. And we have Lieutenant, excuse me, Dumont. All right.
Thank you, Serena. Thank you for having us here tonight. This might be my last public event I do as your police chief. I'll be retiring October 11th. So I'm going to address just kind of the general where I think we are in time and space, and then I'm going to take all the questions you want for more of the sort of the granular details of what's happening specifically where you live. Lieutenant Dumont is in charge of that entire district. So the way our police department is really broken up is in the patrol division, the city's broken into 4 quadrants or 4 districts. Sean oversees one of those districts, which happens to be where both of your associations reside. So he is intimately aware, a lot more detail than I am, exactly the things that are going on. He also controls resources that are in your district, to include your neighborhood police officer that's there. So let me first start off by saying that statistics are just one measurement, and if we used only statistics, I'm here to tell you that crime is down, but you don't feel like it is my guess, right? I don't feel like it is. But what I am hearing, and I think you will all confirm that, is that people have stopped calling. When there's actual crimes that happen, they have just literally stopped calling us by the tune of probably over 20%. Some of that is on us. I absolutely know that, because what happens is you call and you get to the dispatch center, which they don't work for the police department. We pay them a good chunk of money to give us our calls. And it usually, one, takes forever for someone to get there, or two, they'll tell you, we're not gonna come out on that. And I apologize for that, but at any given time, for all 200,000 people, like right now, we probably have 10 cars, maybe 11 cars out for the whole city to respond to calls. And what's happening, and some of it is very good, because I think it's the right thing to do, is we have more than 9 times a day where there is a call that requires 6 or more cars to respond. And it's really, we need those to help de-escalate a situation. When you have an individual that is decompensating, or they're under the influence, they're emotionally distraught. 31 years ago when I started, it was just one person would show up. Sean started his police career in California, he'd probably tell you the same thing. We don't do that anymore. State law has mandated many of these changes. And again, like anything else, I have had to evolve, because it is the absolute right thing to do. I share all this too, to share just a personal story. And it's a personal story of tragedy, and that is, I know homelessness is on the rise here. Addiction issues are on the rise. My sweet dear nephew just died of drug overdose last week. He'd been struggling with homelessness and addiction issues for nearly 20 years. So I have a maybe slightly different perspective of people who are in that state. It took my brother and sister-in-law everything they could do to get him some treatment, and he was doing really well for about 9 months. They're in California as well, and I just got the call last week. And I'm a little broken up about it. But I will say, last night I was at City Council, which lasted till about 10, and there were 15 or 20 people that addressed the dais, the city councilors, about crime, homelessness issues, crime that's driving some of the homelessness issues, the crime that's around homelessness issues, and how people feel about that. And those are policy decisions that council obviously has to make, but I'm here to tell you, I understand it. But I also want you to all understand too that what our limitations are. So it's not unlawful for people to camp. It is unlawful for them to keep their tent up during the daytime. But one of the things that I face, and this is where I struggle as your chief, and you won't have to worry about it after October 11th, because you're going to get somebody different, is I'm going to send, or the lieutenant's going to send people out there to tell people you have to move. And, in a perfect world, they'd be like, no problem, pack up and leave. But in 31 years of police work, everybody I've ever arrested, I probably can count on one hand now, and I told them, turn around, put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest. Oh, okay. I wish it happened like that, it just doesn't. So now I'm gonna be in a position where I'm gonna have our police officers, your police officers, potentially get into a rather ugly use of force incident for someone who's under the influence, doesn't want to follow the rules, for minor trespassing. And I know at some point, and I heard it last night loud and clear, get them out of there, take them to jail. The jail may or may not take them. Again, we don't run the jail. But it is one of those issues that I don't know how to get out from underneath until we actually say, okay, we are going to enforce these things. And I know it's a struggle, but I've been on the other end when I was actually a real police officer. I dress up like one every day, but I haven't done any real police work in a very long time. But I know that we're going to get to a breaking point because people are sick and tired of seeing what's going on. They're sick and tired of the crime. They're sick and tired of the vandalism. They're sick and tired of seeing people living in squalor. And again, like I said, I watched my nephew go through that, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. Sorry about that. So just as a kind of a general rule, where we are right now is when I took over, I set 3 strategic goals for the organization. The first one, which I believe was probably the most important for the police department, was we needed to fill our vacancies. We had almost 30 vacancies, and scarily, at the time, 40% of our staff were eligible for retirement. We only have, or only authorized 241 certified police officers. That's from my position all the way down to the brand new recruit officer for a city of 200,000 people. So we rearranged reallocated some resources to push quite a bit of recruitment, get the background checks going, and I'm here to say today, I don't think we actually have a police officer vacancy. The vacancy we have right now, we have a lieutenant vacancy, we have a couple of sergeant vacancies, and then a corporal vacancy, which are still vacancies. Which is what prompted me to go to the city manager a year ago and say, this is not working. And that's why I ended up talking to city council. We got a community group together to say, okay, here's where we are with, here's how much resources we have. This is what we're going to every night, every day. And that's why the council and that community group decided to get a levy on the ballot. I don't know if it'll pass or not. I hope it does. I won't be here for that. But we wanted to fill those vacancies. The second priority was, is I wanted to utilize technology. And I wanted to use it to do a couple of things. One, I wanted to make us more transparent and more efficient. Because in the 31 years I've been in this, and Lieutenant, not quite 30 years, but he'd tell you the same thing. There is a wave of technology that's coming at us greater than I've ever seen before. Just this camera that we're wearing on our chests today, we're about this close to pilot a program to partner with artificial intelligence that will pick up what we're reading, pick up what the camera's hearing, what they're seeing, and it will basically proofread a report for you. There's one other police agency in the nation right now, I think it's Fort Collins, Colorado, that's piloting it. We've talked to the Axon folks. We're gonna probably get a demo of probably 20 officers. Now you still have to proofread that, but that would save a tremendous amount of time. The other one is using and it's not an easy way to say it, but using the drones as a first responder. So we've got the ability now to strategically put those, we don't have them yet, but I wanted to get them on different buildings in the city. And it would be not only for the police department, but it would be for fire and other first responders as well. They can get to any place in the city a lot faster than we can, and to start, and when I say they, I mean the drones, start pumping back real-time information for situational awareness. So you think even like a cardiac victim, fire EMS would start seeing exactly what's on the ground for them right now. And I was just was it yesterday or the day before, there was a high impact vehicle crash, where am I? Right over here. It would have immediately started pushing back real-time information to the first responders. And then, but the downside with that is you need a data pipe that's big enough that will contain all that data. So there's a couple, is this cut dead not on me here? Okay. So that's a lot of information that's getting pushed through the ether. And over 20 years ago, the federal government decided, you know what, we need a data pipe for first responders that's going to be able to control and handle all that information. So two things really sprung up. The first one is called FirstNet. And FirstNet is the best way to explain it is kind of an information superhighway for data. There's a handful of agencies in the region that have already adopted that. It's in what's called band 14. It's like the Goldilocks zone of data. If there's any communication engineers here, you probably understand this a lot better than me. The second one is called NextGen 911. And NextGen 911, we have a portion of it installed now at our dispatch center. But the best way I've had it explained to me is it will be what the telephone was to the telegraph. So text to 911 is part of NextGen 911, but the next evolution of that is these. So everyone, well, except my mom, has got one of these, right? And so if you were out of that crash or you are watching a crime going on, you now start recording that media file, you send it to the dispatch center, again, but they need a data pipe big enough to control that. And that is the fully moved out platform of NextGen 911. So those two kind of work in conjunction with each other. Now, at FirstNet, there was what they call a request for proposal that went out on that. There was only one cellular company that bid on it, and that was AT&T. Verizon, though, is, evolving how they're doing business, and I think that we'll eventually have a platform that can handle that kind of data. I'm still not sure yet. But those are just some of the examples of the technology that's out there that I really wanted our organization to utilize, again, to build that efficiency and transparency. And then the last one, anybody here a Jim Collins fan who read Good to Great? Anybody? Okay. Love that book. I know it's a little dated, but it's about having fundamentals, about having goals, what keeps you, what makes your organization great, sustain that greatness over time. And so my goal for the city, for the police department and the corporation of Vancouver was really to be the safest urban city in the state of Washington. And we're in a small group of urban cities here because most cities are quite small. So I'm looking at, I sort of drew a benchmark of those cities that are 100,000 people or more. And that is what I wanted. That's what I wanted for our organization. So if you look at some of our benchmarks, we're close, but in other areas, we've got an opportunity to get better. And so those are the 3 strategic goals that I set for the organization. I know the lieutenant and the deputy chief, who's Troy Price, who could not be here tonight, who I'm hoping will replace me, will carry those goals on. And I see we got the world's greatest mayor, if you haven't figured that out, sitting in the back there, and she got to hear some of those comments last night as well. And like I told a group of people on the 9/11 thing, as your police chief, I have to stay somewhat politically agnostic, but I'm leaving, and I completely endorse this mayor, if you can't imagine. And I'm gonna just give you one little personal story here. Earlier this year, my wife had a pretty significant health scare, ended up in the hospital, and I needed to take some time off to take care of her, and the mayor organized meals to be brought to my house, including I have a wheat allergy, I have a gluten problem, I can't eat wheat. She makes me the best gluten-free key lime pie. And I will tell you, I've only been in this organization 5.5 years. I spent 26 years at the Washington County Sheriff's Office over in Hillsborough, which I thought was amazing. That did not happen where I came from. You all live in a really amazing place, and that's because of people like our mayor. And so I love you. Thank you so much. As far as, how we move forward, though, this is my home. I'm not moving. I moved here for this job, and I plan on staying here. So I'm part of your community, and I'll be Jeff Moore, the private citizen, in about 3 more weeks. So I have a tendency to do a lot of talking, so I'm going to shut up just for a minute, see if there's any questions, and then I can let the lieutenant go for some more granular detail. Any questions, or anybody want to say, Chief, that's a bunch of hogwash?
Well, now you said anybody could camp out. Is it just public land that they can camp?
So there are specific, I see Jamie Spinelli in the back there, she can hip check me if I'm wrong. There are certain areas you're excluded from any camp. But there are certain areas where you can camp at night and set up your little area to camp in, but then once the sun comes up, and Danny, correct me, like maybe if you're a graveyard worker, that you have a job, you could probably stay during the day. I don't think a lot of these tent people you see out here are working at night. But that would be the one exclusion. And Jamie could probably go into a lot more details of where all the exclusions are. It basically, in a nutshell, protected areas, 1,000-foot buffers around the safe stays. You can't do any of that there. But you just need an area this big, and you could have 30 tents in an area this big. So.
Is there anything along Evergreen?
Jamie,
Camping, is camping allowed or is camping happening?
is camping allowed by Evergreen?
She's on the agenda.
Oh, Jamie's on the agenda. She'll answer those questions. There was a question in the back.
No, it's just a comment. In my 33 years in my current home, I've had 4 police calls, had response within 7 or 8 minutes every time, usually 2 or 3. Not so much anymore, but we need more police officers at night.
I agree. When I was a real police officer, I only worked from 9 at night to 7 in the morning. And I will tell you, there's a special kind of people that come out to cause problems. I think they set their alarm like, okay, time to go out. And that's why I told my kids, nothing ever good happens at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yes.
Maybe this isn't for you, but when I call 911 for my property, it gets shoved in Multnomah County. Do you know who I would contact or how to rectify that? And, you know, people are complaining about Clark County's call time. Multnomah County is like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they have to send it to Clark County.
So I would do 2 things. Number 1, I would get a hold of Cressa. But number 2, I would call, what's your, are you calling from a landline or your cell phone? Yeah, you probably need to get a hold of your cellular. I had that happen to me one time when I was over in Clackamas. I was coaching a youth football team and a kid snapped his femur and I called 911 and they sent me to Salem. I'm like, no, I need paramedics here.
When I have called 911, I also get Oregon or Portland, and they said that the towers bounce, and that's the quickest one that picks up on the signal, and then they switch me over.
That's not helpful at all.
No,
It's not, well, I will say, keep, that happens to me all the time. So the very first thing I do as soon as somebody answers is say, I need to speak with Clark County.
and I
And
do
then
that,
they immediately
and they
transfer.
switch you over.
I saw a hand up here and then we'll go over here.
Well, I talked to an AT&T network engineer, who said the closest towers from I live on the river, and the closest tower is Oregon. That's how they serve.
Oh, okay.
That's what they talk to me.
Let's go back here and then I'll come over here.
So this might be a little too deep in the woods, but you mentioned the word fragment. You're saying that the dispatch is contracted, the jail is contracted. Is this because you want to save money and you're contracting out and we're seeing more and more of this happening?
Great question. No. So the city's responsibility is to run a police department. The county is responsible for running jail. It used to be the sheriff's responsibility. So Clark County has a jail, an appointed jail manager. So that's the board of county councilors made that policy decision to have a jail manager run the jail. The city pays the jail for misdemeanor lodgings. So it's a completely another government entity. And please do not feel bad because before I got into government, I had no idea how this worked either. And then the 911 center, they're called public safety answering points or PSAPs. It's a consolidated, like a government organization that most people think, oh, our 911 excise tax on our cell phone covers it. It doesn't. We paid a lot of money. Thank you to the mayor for finding the money for us. But yes, we're in what's called an interlocal agreement with the 911 center or PSAP. And so they cover all of Clark County and they dispatch all the 911 calls for all the emergency responders in Clark County. We just happen to be one of the largest customers for Cressa.
So if they dispatch for all Clark County, then why? I thought because I had a 503 on my cell phone, that when I called 911, that was the reason why I called Multnomah. And then I'd say, I'm in Vancouver, they switch me over. But it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like it's a cell tower. But so the 911 dispatch though is separate. You said.
Correct. So in our region,
Always been that
yeah,
way?
it's been that way for 30 years. And I would ask maybe the mayor, was there ever an individual dispatch up here? No. And I can say in Washington County, it's the same thing. It's the Washington County Consolidated Communication Agency. So Portland is the same exact way. It's Bureau Office of Emergency Communication or BOAC. Clark County has CCOM. The one anomaly, I think Lake Oswego has their own dispatch. I think they still have their own dispatch, but it's, the states were trying to push to consolidate all of them, which I would have been against. I think I had a question up here and then I'll go to you.
I've lived in Vancouver for 40 years, and I don't know anybody that feels that they're as safe today as they were 10 years ago. You mentioned that sometimes when you respond to a call, you have to have up to 6 police officers answer the call. Well, if that's true, then you need 6 times the number of police officers. It's, crime is getting worse. There's more bad guys out there. We gotta have more policemen, because you can't have the same number of policemen dealing with criminals that are worse criminals than they used to be. I can tell you, if you tried to arrest me, I'd put my hands behind the back and let you put the cuffs on. And when you tell me to put my hands on the steering wheel, they're on the steering wheel, and I'm not giving you the finger telling you you're a pig.
I appreciate that.
So we need more police officers.
So maybe just to shed a little bit of light on that, and the mayor's heard this one already. So if you think about just our ecosystem here in Clark County, most of our partners, who are amazing, are relatively small. Camas, Ridgefield, West Hugo, Ridgefield, they don't have a lot of law enforcement officers there. Then our next largest partner is Clark County Sheriff, and they are one of the lowest funded public safety sheriff's offices in the state. So when you look at our like-sized counties, or our like-sized cities, where, like our partner counties, so if you were to compare us to Spokane, or compare us to Tacoma, we have our overall ecosystem at any given time, driving around entire Clark County, we're at 0.86 officers ecosystem-wide for every 1,000 residents. And I know that's kind of hard metric to wrap your mind around, but Spokane County, again, similar sized city, has 1.16 officers for every 1,000 residents, and Pierce County is like 1.08. The other dynamic that's interesting is the closest urban big city to Spokane County is Coeur d'Alene. Not a lot of riffraff going on in Coeur d'Alene. And Tacoma is 46 miles away from Seattle. We are separated by a body of water from Portland, 1 mile. And so, and no one from Portland or Multnomah County is ever coming over here to help us for anything, which was, again, part of the pitch that I made to council and the community advisory group, that just coming out of the chute, you know, we don't have the same kind of level of mutual aid that a lot of the other, our 2 like-sized cities have in the state of Washington. So we're a little bit behind the power curve. And my frame of reference, I can tell you right now, where I left, so Washington County Sheriff's Office, our busiest beat, when I still worked there, was Beaverton. We had a precinct where deputies would leave every day, and that Washington County deputies made more traffic stops in the city of Beaverton than Beaverton police did, at least when I left there. Now imagine if we had like 90 more sheriff's deputies rolling around Clark County, the difference that would make. That's on Clark County, but the mayor, our city council voted last night, put that levy on the ballot. Right? Well, I'm on duty, I can't advocate for or against it. All I can do is provide you education for it. But I don't disagree with you, sir. Completely. And I wish everyone would follow the rules. And you wouldn't need us actually if that happened. I'm sorry, I had one question back here, and then I'll come back to you.
I had 2 questions related to kind of the changes you're seeing coming in the future. One related to drones. Is there issues potentially with like flight paths or the lower than the commercial aircraft and drones? Like, is that a challenge to bring those in?
It is a challenge, but it is not, it would not preclude us from doing it. All of our pilots, and that's what they would be, pilots would file flight plans, and we stay under the ceiling that we need to. We've got manual drones right now that our officers are using that have been just amazing. But the first responder program is already being used in Gresham, and they've got a similar airport proximity issues. So we would be able to do that up here as well. And then you have the second
Yeah,
question.
the second one was about the future 911, the next step of the PRESA essentially. Is there opposite presence laws issues with using private citizen cell phone data or recordings to?
I missed the first part.
Yeah, so with the, I forget if you call it future 911, like the.
Oh, next gen 911.
Yeah. So I realize you're initiating a police officer call via cell phone video from a citizen essentially. Is there been a challenge later on potentially with officer presence laws with the way that is initiated or potentially evidence collected that could be indicated later?
It wouldn't be as much of a challenge because as it would be just a public record. Anytime you call 911, it becomes a public record. So whatever video you generate to 911 would have become a public record. It would be subject to all the same redaction laws. So, I mean, if there was little kids in the video, before they would release it to anybody that asked for it, that would have to be redacted. Same things we do when we have to redact these videos here. So, but it it wouldn't reverse. Like all of a sudden, once because you send a video to 911 doesn't mean like your personal cell phone is now subject to a search warrant.
My question, I guess, is I've in the past been told that private pictures I've taken of non-felony offenses can't be used to produce charges because an officer wasn't there to witness it. And if the officer isn't there, it's not a felony, then it can't initiate the charge.
So,
Unless it's a judge gets involved. I believe that was.
so there's certain rules when it comes to misdemeanor crimes, but in Washington, there's very few misdemeanor crimes that can't be arrested outside of an officer's presence. Now, when it comes to civil infractions, driving offenses and all of that, an officer has to witness that. So if you take video of somebody speeding or somebody running a stop sign, we can't take action based on that. We would have to witness it.
And there's a good reason for that too, because with what's happened with computers, it's going to be real easy for somebody to create a scene and nobody's going to know the difference between a real video and a video that's been created by artificial intelligence. That's why you need an officer to actually see it, because otherwise you're going to end up having all kinds of videos out there that are made up by artificial intelligence saying that this happened. You have to have the person there to verify that it's a legitimate video.
Let me get to this and I'll come right back to you.
Just really quick, you don't need to give me the campaign speech, but what are the details of the levy?
So we have some educational information there. So basically the levy will add 80 police, if passed, the levy will add 80 police officers. You only do one?
That's all I have.
That's all I have. Take a photo.
Yeah, you can
There's
go
more
to
on
the
the
city's
table?
website and it has all that
Okay, there's much
information.
more on the table. So the levy will add 80, if passed, would add 80 police officers, 36 professional staff, money, which, so when you add all that, you need more people in human resources. You're going to need probably another dedicated attorney. It also adds money to help our homeless assistant resource team. It provides additional money for technology as well. A perfect example would be like speeding cameras, red light cameras, that sort of thing. And it's 41 cents for every $1,000 of assessed value of your home. And there's flyers in the back. Am I going too long? Oh, okay, 4 minutes. Go ahead.
Some cities like Seattle have a lot of time spent, police time spent with people who are in trouble, in need, a mental situation or a drug situation, something else versus crime. Do you have a feeling for, can you give an estimate of how much you spend on helping people who need to be helped because of those types of things versus investigating crimes?
Jamie just talked about this last night. Well, she knows my data better than me.
So regarding unsheltered homelessness specifically, so, and that could be mental health, it could be a variety of things, but it's about, well, since July 8th, it's been about 24% of patrol hours are spent on unsheltered homeless.
And the rest is crime, or do you have another breakdown?
Well, even some of the stuff that's related to unsheltered homelessness is crime, not all of it, but some of it. I don't know what the rest of their breakdown is.
So what Jamie basically said is about 24% of our time related to to the calls for service since July is dealing with homelessness, the things that are surrounding homelessness, unhoused community, that sort of thing. So I just got a handful of minutes before I got to cut it over. Is there any like specific data? Because that's why we brought this large human being here. Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to ask about cameras that we actually have installed around our homes. Is there ability to utilize that? Because the town we used to live, the police department had an option where you could opt in to tell them you have cameras installed outside and, you know, drive or whatever. And if there's a crime in the neighborhood, they would then ask, basically, they come and ask for the footage.
Yes,
I feel like somehow we can probably organize like a neighborhood watch where we do, a lot of people have cameras these days, where we can actually somehow, right?
Yes, and if you go to our website, there's a link that'll show you how to do that as well. And then this platform here has made it much easier to upload that video and to use it actually in the criminal case. Yes.
Question. Is our area on Evergreen still 164th included? And is it still true that 164th is where you spend the majority of your time?
So
yes, it's included, but it's a limited area. We were having some issues over the summer at the dead end of 164th, at that little park, non-park there. I met with city parks, and somebody had created a makeshift fire ring there, and so I convinced them that we should probably remove that, because then it lets people think that you could go down there and have a fire. So that was removed. But overall crime, like major crimes are down. I mean, I can tell you that for Columbia River, we've got assaults are down 23.5% from last year. Burglaries are down 63%. What else?
From what?
Yeah, from the year before. So this is a percentage change. So it's like this year there were 13 total assaults, and that covers everything from domestic violence to stranger crime and all of that. And then so last year there were 17. This year we got 13. We can go down. Robberies are down 60%. Simple assaults are down 47%. Thefts are down 42.9%. So one of the trends we're seeing is a lot of the crime is going down, but our total calls for service are going up. We're dealing with a lot more mental health issues, which the chief kind of touched on. There were some sweeping legislative changes a few years back, and so they took kind of the best practices that we were already doing and enumerated them in the law. So that's why on average 9 times per day, a call that maybe 7, 8 years ago, we would send 1 or 2 officers to, and they grab onto the guy, put him in handcuffs and take him to jail, and they clear that call in 10, 15 minutes. Now it's taking 2, 3, 4 hours because we have to exhaust all de-escalation efforts. We have to get additional officers there because it's been proven that if you have an overwhelming number of officers, then your likelihood to use force is less, which is the goal. But in order to get through those de-escalation efforts, there has to be some form of compliance on the part of the person, and sometimes that takes time to get them to listen and get them to then give some compliance, because you can't de-escalate somebody unless there's some form of compliance there. So it takes time, it takes resources. We also have to call it outside resources. We've got our co-responder team that are mental health professionals that we call out regularly to calls. We also have to have less lethal tools there so that we have options in dealing with the person, and all of that takes time. So that's why, like I said, 6, 7, 8 years ago, you'd send 1 or 2 officers and you wrap up a call in 10, 15 minutes. Now it's taking 6 or more officers, an hour or 2 or more to get through all of that. That being said, while those 6+ officers are there, now we have 4 officers covering the remainder of the city. So that's where the rub is. We else have any questions?
All right. I'm gonna wrap it up, Serena. I want to thank everybody, first of all. You are all why Vancouver is amazing as well. The fact that you care enough to spend your own time here is amazing. And so thank you so much for having us. It's been one of my greatest professional honors to be your police chief. Thank you so much.
Now we're back to work. We do have a neighborhood police officer. I haven't met him yet. It's Cole, let me put these on, Larson, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, he wanted some time off, and being his boss, I couldn't wouldn't say no. So back off, but, you'll recognize Cole if you haven't seen him yet. He's like this big.
All right. So there are, a few of us have a way of connecting with him. So if you leave us your email address and you maybe want to chat with him by email, I think he's pretty open to that.
All of our, if you go to the city's website, click on Vancouver Police Department, go to East Precinct, District 4, it has my contact information and it has Officer Larson's contact.
Thank you.
Are you off of no plan? Broadcasting.
Yeah, the precinct is on 155th and.
All right, so we're gonna be moving forward with Evergreen Highway Trail, the paved schedule for east of southeast 164th and the trail update. Ryan Laposa, a good friend of mine. He's with Streets and Transportation and he's here to chat with you about that.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Ryan Laposa, Transportation Manager for the city. I'm not gonna hold this quite as close, so raise your hand if you're not hearing me. So I want to start off with the Evergreen Highway Trail. The next phase that we have been working on is the segment between Chelsea, the west end, and Image, or, you know, kind of right there by the Arboretum at the east end. Been working on the design on it for many years. Spent the last couple of years getting all of the right-of-way acquired that we needed to from each of the properties along the corridor. And we're now finally ready to go to construction. And so just got word today that a couple of words need to be changed in a couple of paragraphs. So that's happening as we speak. And I think we'll be out to bid, if not this week, certainly next week. So we'll go to bid. Usually we put those bids out for 3 to 4 weeks, give contractors plenty of time to look at the project and give us a good bid. We'll get those bids opened, and then I think probably by October, November, we'll have the project awarded to a contractor. And then the contractor will then give us a schedule that will show, you know, when they're gonna start and how they're gonna progress through the corridor. And once we have that information in hand, you will then start to push that information out to the folks along the corridor, but we can also push it out to the 2 neighborhood associations. So folks, you know, folks know what's happening. You know, most of the work is occurring, you know, off the roadway most of it is on the south side of the roadway. So, you know, there would probably be some single lane closures, but, you know, fairly minimal impact, fairly minimal, delays in getting folks through there. So happy to report, we're finally gonna build another segment of the Evergreen Highway Trail. We did get a couple of grants for that helps. But the big challenge, as I've said year after year, when I come out and talk to you folks, is it's the funding that we're challenged with in getting these segments built. Now, we do have someone from the neighborhood, I don't know if she's here this evening, who has stepped up and said, hey, I know a little bit about writing grants. I know a little bit about, you know, looking for grant opportunities. I would like to help. And so we have our city grant team talking to her and, you know, sharing the information about the overall trail plan for Evergreen Highway. And, you know, she might be able to help us out, which we always appreciate that. But that's, you know, that's always been the challenge with this particular project is finding the money for it. So, but we'll get this next segment going, get it built, and then we'll start looking at the next one. Yes, sir.
What's your estimated completion date for that cycle?
You know, I don't know exactly how many working days we assign to it. Charles, I don't know if you know that off the top of your head. It's, if I were to guess, it'll probably take them at least 6 months or so to get it done. It's, you know, it's excavating on that south side. There's some places where we've got to put in some small retaining walls. And then it's putting that, you know, it's putting that concrete trail down. We also have some underground storm work that we need to do. Our storm folks came to us and said, yeah, there's a little bit more we need to do there. So we've got a little bit of underground work to do. But yeah, I would say it'll be well into next year before it's done. Yes.
So on the agenda, it talks about the schedule for east of Southeast 164th, which is what we're interested in. Is there?
So that was going to be, that's the next project I was going to talk about.
Okay.
So if there's no other questions about the trail. So yes,
East of Image, further down, when there was some work done there, there was I don't know, there were the driveways into the people's homes, but then there was this gully in between that looked dangerous, and now it's been filled in.
Yeah.
Could you explain what that was about?
well, I wasn't here when we built that segment. What my understanding was is initially they created the gully as a place where the runoff from the roadway could go. But because it was, it had drop offs off the edge of the roadway, off the edge of the curb, we came back in later and we backfilled it, with some, and it's backfilled with some stone, that allows the water to still get in and seep in, but it's not nearly as menacing as it first
Is that
looked.
the French?
The French drain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think people who ride their bikes there found it unsafe.
Yeah, so we had to go back and pivot what we did there, and fortunately, we learned our lesson on that one, and so we've taken a completely different.
So you're not going to do that again and
No.
then put rocks in the
No,
gully?
no.
and-
Basically, what we're doing on this one is, we're creating a path for the drainage to go, we're putting in some additional inlets to get the drainage. The key is what to do with the drainage from the road, because right now it just runs off to the side of the road and, it percolates into the ground. We're creating paths where that drainage can go, but not in the same way that we did that first section.
So it will be safe now.
Very safe, yeah,
Thank you.
yes. Anything else on the trail?
Quick one.
Yeah.
So there's a little confusion over here. Some people live between Image and 164th. You talk Chelsea to Image, you're about to talk about 164th East. What about that area there? Is that considered done? I do ride there, so I mean.
Well, there's portions of it that have a trail. Some of it is on the trails on the north side as you get close, in the vicinity of Columbia Springs. There's other portions that we were just talking about, but there's still quite a bit of portion that doesn't have anything. And so those are future trail segments. What I'm talking about east of 164th is not the trail. What I'm going to talk about is our paving project that we're going to be doing. But yeah, the one trail segment that we are laser focused on right now is the one we're about to go to construction on, which is between Chelsea and Image. So, yes.
It's wonderful that they're starting the trail again. I've been waiting for years, but I do live in the area that he's referring to from 100 to Image. And that was supposed to have been done some time ago, and now you've skipped, so it's just not going to be done?
Well, it's a planned project. We have no funding for it. And so it's that, and again, that's the challenge that we face.
How do you get funding for one section and not another section?
Because we were fortunate to get funding for this first section. We got some funding from the state. We went back to the state to try to fund these other sections. There were just simply more projects proposed during that grant cycle than what those programs could fund, and our project did not score well enough. So it's a very competitive process. It's not ask and you shall receive. It's ask, demonstrate why your project is the best project, and then let the grant folks determine, is it really the best project, or was the project from Shoreline the better project? It's a very competitive project. It's gotten even more competitive in recent years just because there's so many more agencies going after a pretty finite amount of money. Yes.
Two things. I live up on 144th Court, and I have reached a level of extreme bitterness about the extremely slow pace of creating a path along the most dangerous part of Evergreen from 148th to the top of the hill from my area. I see people walking along there. Anyway, so I am really bitter about the pace at which this is funded. Something I have mentioned more than once is, why has the city or the county or whoever is in charge of this not gone to the citizens who live along the property owners who live along Evergreen and asked us if we would be willing to participate in funding this trail that is so important? It is so unsafe On a regular basis, I see people walking single file on the south side of Evergreen between 148th and 164th, walking dogs, equipment parked that takes up 2/3 or 3/4 of the eastbound lane. And nothing seems to get done, and I am really sick and tired of waiting. I've lived there for 33 years, and I've been to a bazillion meetings about this, and I am tired of waiting. When are you gonna ask us to help you fund it?
Can I add
Well,
to
let-
what she said?
Well, let me answer her question first.
Okay.
So you raise a very interesting idea, and I don't know that it's an idea we've considered. We have done that type of work in the past. It's what we call a local improvement district. It's how we funded the rail quiet zone. So all of the improvements that we put in to get the trains to stop sounding their horns along Evergreen Highway was funded through an LID that residents along the corridor are paying into. It's entirely possible we could go to use that same tool for the trail. There's a couple of questions that will come to mind. Do we have support? You certainly it feels like you would very much support that. I've done a few of these, and that becomes a real challenge in getting enough support from residents who are going to be willing to write that check every month or every year to help pay for that. So I am more than willing to explore that, because I'm just as frustrated as you. I see the value. I see how great the existing trail sections are that we have along there. I see how wonderful it would be to have the entire corridor done, not just for the corridor, but for what the city has planned for other trail connections up and down 192nd Avenue, across 18th Street, getting connections to Burnt Bridge Creek. It's an excellent opportunity. Camas is thinking about, doing work along their portion of Evergreen Highway. So it's an intriguing idea, and I'm certainly willing to go back and noodle on it. But it comes with its own set of challenges.
Well, one of the things, I think what really makes that area dangerous is that a couple houses have arborvitae that are smack dab on the road. There is no right of way. I think a house up on 164th and Evergreen had to move their fence back because they had no right of way. And I wonder, how did these people just continue I mean, you can't, there's, on the other side of the road, there's a ditch.
Yeah.
So there's nowhere to walk safely.
So we have situations all over the community where folks have encroached into the right of way, mostly because they just don't know that there's a right of way line there. So if there's certain locations, please let me know where those are at, because we do have a team that goes out and looks at those and determines, does that need to change? Is it unsafe? And if we were to get that moved, cut back, or removed and taken away, if it's all in the right of way and it's inhibiting the ability to even just walk along the edge of the roadway, yeah, we want to look at that. So our challenge is we don't have folks actively going out and looking for those. We just don't have the staff to do that, but we are very responsive when we hear about them. So send me an email. Serena and Dode have my email address. Send me an email, give me those locations, and we can take a look at those. I appreciate that. Yes.
I'm gonna try something that's not on the agenda, but you might know something about.
Perfect.
So Quantum Fiber has strung down Old Evergreen, and if you're in a court, you can't get it. I presume that they need a streets easement in order to go up to courts.
No, Quantum has what we call a franchise agreement with the city.
So they can follow contract.
And so that it allows them to use the right of way to run their utilities. Now, if they're running overhead, they're obviously connecting to existing Clark Public Utility poles. So they also have to get their permission. So there could be something with CPU that's standing in the way of being able to run up the courts, but I've never heard that before.
Well, we don't have overhead.
Well, and then
that means they gotta dig
and then
deep.
so if they have to dig, that may be what's getting in the way. Is I think Quantum really tries to take the path of least resistance. I know, and I don't know how you feel about Ziply. Ziply has come into the community. They are rolling out a similar service to Quantum. And they don't have any problem digging. They're gonna be doing a lot of digging, and they're essentially planning to light up the entire community. And then, you know, get as many subscribers as they can. So that might be an alternate.
I thought they were a reseller of Quantums, but okay.
No, they're different. They're different. So, yes.
Just one quick question, I want to circle back to the woman who was talking about not having her area serviced because of grant or money funding, and you mentioned shoreline. Are you talking about shoreline Washington? So all these grants are state?
Yeah.
And they all go into, so everybody in the state.
Yeah, we compete.
You're competing against everyone in the state in every single area.
Yeah,
You're
so
writing you're trying to get good grant writers stating its
Yeah.
case for everybody in the state of Washington.
and the biggest challenge we have, so there are a limited number and type of grants that we can go after for a project like the Evergreen Highway Trail. Most of them are geared towards pedestrians, bicycles, you know, pedestrian safety. But a lot of them give a lot of weight to making improvements to the system near schools. And we don't have a school along Evergreen Highway. But they also give credit towards making improvements for better access to parks and recreation. And, you know, I've talked the heck out of the Arboretum as being this, you know, wonderful destination that people want to be able to walk to. But it doesn't carry as much weight as, say, someone, and I just use Shoreline as an example because it's the only city in Washington that came to mind, Bellingham, Mount Vernon, who might be building new sidewalks to get kids to school, or new sidewalks that provide better access to transit. And so it's gotten so much more competitive. I had really hoped, you know, several years ago, we talked about this in this forum. And at that time, I was telling you about how Evergreen Highway was getting the Lewis and Clark Trail designation. I really had hoped that that would open up some new opportunities for, you know, for us to tap into different funding. It hasn't. But we keep trying. We've got a team of folks at the city that do nothing but write grants, go look for grants. And we found some new ones, and, you know, and we're testing the waters all the time. Is this the right fit for Evergreen? So we haven't given up.
Yeah.
It's just gonna take some time.
Well, didn't somebody just rent their house on Evergreen, not very far from the hatchery? Probably about 6 years ago, a house on almost a park-like sitting on the north side of Evergreen, maybe just down from, is it Steamboat Landing, just a little bit further?
I didn't get that memo. So, yeah, if they did, yeah.
They wanted to change that whole.
Well, there is a house that was donated to the city that's right next to Columbia Springs.
Right.
So, yeah, we got that, and we're still trying to figure out what we're gonna do with that whole area.
Yeah, well, we've been rented out for 6 years.
Yeah.
And they just left, so just wanted.
I'm down to 1 minute, and I haven't even gotten to 164. So let me talk about that real quick. So for those of you who live on the segment east of 164th, you've probably called me and shared with, you know, how horrible condition that roadway's in. I've said, we're gonna do it this year. And then a year later, we're gonna do it this year. We are going to do it in 2025. I will be back here this time next year, and it will be done. Complete resurfacing, remove all the existing gnarly pavement, put brand new pavement back in. I have a map just outside my office, 2025 pavement program, big blue line going right down Evergreen Highway from 164th to the city limits, the east city limits. So and you know, every once in a while, someone comes along and says, hey, could we delay that? Because we've got this, no. So I'm fighting like hell, whatever you want to call it, to keep that project so that we can finish that last segment of the corridor. It will include traffic calming like we've done on the other segments, so we can, you know, keep the speeders in check. But we're gonna get it done. And I mean it. I'm coming here next year, assuming I get the invite. And I'll be reporting that it's done.
Is it funded?
It's funded, yeah. No grants needed there. Our paving program usually starts in July. So we'll have a little bit of prep work ahead of time. So you might see either city crews or a contractor out there doing some prep work. But then, yeah, paving season for us basically starts July 5th every year when summer starts here in the Pacific Northwest. Sir.
I really appreciate hearing there's gonna be some traffic calling at you, because that's a dangerous section of road and people go way too fast there. I really appreciate that you've lowered the speed limit from 40 down to 30. People used to go 40 to 60, and now they go pretty much 30 to 50. It would be my hope that if we could drop that down to 25, that people might go more like 25 to 35. And I think that's justified because of all the houses and driveways going on, all these blind corners, very narrow, nowhere to walk. You're walking in the street because you can't walk in the ditch. And so I just hope you consider lowering the speed limit down to 25 like it is in Camas.
So
like
one of
it
the
is in the highly populated areas to the west.
So one of the recommendations that came out of our updated transportation systems plan, which council just approved at the beginning of this year, was a wholesale lowering of speed limits throughout the city. So we will be looking at every corridor. I could easily see Evergreen Highway speed being lowered. But we're gonna work on a citywide, speed limit change that'll lower speed limits throughout the city.
Wonderful.
Now she's coming with the hook, so I've got like one, maybe two more.
Quick question, all the pullouts on that east end of 164, I'm sure they were supposed to be helpful. It doesn't seem like they're being used for helpful ways anymore. Lots of dumping and people camping, or is there any I guess, are they there for a reason? And what would be the chances of them not being there anymore or being blocked off?
Who knows why they were put there in the first place? It used to be a county road. We've had similar situations elsewhere along Evergreen, especially along Evergreen Boulevard. And so what we've done is we've just come in and we've put some barricades up to block them off.
So how would one at least inquire about that, or, is that a long conversation?
Send me an email with some pictures, some locations, and we'll take a look, and, we can incorporate that into either something that happens sooner or something that would happen with the project. Ma'am, you had your hand up very patiently. I'm gonna let you be the last.
I live on a court where the city designated several years ago the failed roadway, and I think last year you did some basic maintenance to other courts in the area, but not ours because it was too far gone. When will it eventually get addressed?
Send me an email on which street that is, and I'll talk to our pavement team. We try to prioritize those, but yeah, it's so far gone that it's gonna have to be rebuilt, so we have to put that into a different category, but let me know what that is and I can let you know. Thank you so much. Pleasure as always being here.
Thanks, Ryan. The reason I'm kind of being the timekeeper up here is that we actually have an additional, very important special guest speaker that we need to kind of add into the time of our speaking. And we only have this room till 8:45. Like, we have to have it clean by 8:45. So if you look at our schedule here, this will be adjourned by 8:30 so that we can put all the chairs away. So I apologize for being in the corner and holding up my finger when you have this much time. But I'd like to introduce our next speaker. She's going to be talking to us about the SR14 widening project update. And it is Susan Bell. She's an engineer from WSDOT. You say it better than I do. So, okay, and I'm going to hand this over to you.
Great. Yeah, thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Susan Fell. I'm the project engineer for a project office in Vancouver area, and Cecilia Hardwick is my assistant project engineer. And I'm here to talk about SR14 and wrapping that project up. I'm sorry, I had a really nice PowerPoint prepared for you all, but library had some issues with the projector, so you're going to have to bear with me trying to wave my hands and describe things. So I will send out this PowerPoint to Serena later, and she'll make sure that you get it. So presentation overall, I'm going to be covering the project features of the project, And then I'm going to go into one specific element that we have that's very special. It's a part-time shoulder. And then I'll go over what the remaining project schedule is, which I'm sure you all are anxious to hear about. And then I'll cover any upcoming projects in the area. So as far as project features, so overall, this is a congestion and safety project. And as you know, we widened to the north side. We widened so that we have 3 lanes of traffic in both directions. And with that, we have a part-time shoulder in the westbound direction. I'll cover that a little bit later, what that is. We also have a ramp meter, which we installed and is currently in operation at 164th. And what else do I have? We just started installing guardrails, so very close to completion. So again, widening, we held the south edge of the pavement of 14 on the south side, and we widened to the north. We narrowed the shoulders up, we narrowed the lanes down, and we made the lanes continuous. So where it was 2 lanes, now it's 3 lanes. It's three continuous lanes, both directions from 164th to I-205. This minimized impacts to the neighborhoods to the south of SR 14, which allowed some of the existing trees and some of the screening vegetation to remain. And then it also eliminated the need for us to acquire property. It minimized costs and it minimized environmental impact overall. Let's see. So roadway striping. So every time a vehicle changes the lane, there's a ripple effect or slowdown with the traffic behind that vehicle. So congestion relief was a key outcome of this project. And we were very intentional in how we striped the project to minimize the need for lane changing. During construction, I had a traffic camera and I could watch traffic, and you'd be surprised, all the traffic, people like switch lanes like crazy. So the way we have it striped now, you should be able to get on and it will minimize the number of lane changes you have to make. And I'll go over eastbound first. So from I-205, well, between 164th, oh, I'm sorry, I'm starting with eastbound. So from I-205 to 164th, there's 3 continuous lanes now. It should have adequate capacity during peak hours. So in that direction, we have no peak part-time shoulder. And then traffic entering the eastbound from I-205 can remain in the right lane without changing lanes. And I think that's been open to traffic, and I hope you've enjoyed it, because I've heard a lot of people who enjoy not having to merge over, and they're just able to stay in that lane and just get off at 164th if they need to. And then eastbound traffic from downtown Vancouver can remain in the right lane, and they'll be able to get off on 164th as well. In the westbound direction, we have the 3 lanes. Now from 164th Avenue to I-205, the 3rd lane is not open yet, be very soon. So to minimize the unnecessary lane changing and congestion, the roadway is striped so vehicles entering 14 westbound from 164th will not need to change lanes if you're wanting to go to I-205, either northbound or southbound. And then if you're coming from Camas, if you stay in your right lane, that becomes the middle lane, and you can also, it'll go to I-205 as well, southbound I-205, and you don't have to switch lanes. And then during peak hours, this part-time shoulder that I'm going to be describing will be opened. 3 westbound lanes become 4. You'll be able to use the shoulder, kind of like the pilot project that the buses used prior to the project. So that part-time shoulder will allow traffic to exit to I-205 northbound. And then there are several paved pullouts that are located outside the shoulder for disabled vehicles. So the part-time shoulder, westbound direction. It is the first use of a part-time shoulder in the Portland Clark County area. We have a couple other part-time shoulder up in the Seattle area, and it works very well. It allows for congestion relief during peak travel periods, where the shoulder becomes that extra lane that you can use. It minimizes the footprint in the corridor when we have constrained right of way, and it fully uses the pavement for efficient operations. Another project feature we have is the ramp meter. So this ramp meter is an adaptive ramp meter. It's located, as you know, at the 164th on ramp to SR 14 westbound. What it does is it helps keep the consistent flow onto the highway, and it reduces queuing. So the ramp meters actually have what we call wavetronics. It has loops in the roadway, and it monitors the traffic. So it can sense when the volumes get heavier, and it will adapt and change the timing of how it lets cars onto the freeway. So that's its time. So it looks at traffic on the ramp as well as on the through lanes, the main line. The safety benefit is that the predominant crash types, which are rear enders, are kind of eliminated. And then on the on-ramp from 164th to westbound SR 14, you'll notice that it's a different color pavement. It's kind of a little bit lighter gray than the asphalt we have on the freeway. That is a high friction surface treatment. That has more angular rock in it so that it provides friction. So when cars during like icy conditions goes around that curve, it'll keep cars from sliding. So that's what that is there. And then we have guardrail. The guardrail doesn't extend continuously throughout on both sides of the highway. We do have guardrail on both sides, but the way we assess the need for guardrail, it's based on whether or not there's steep non-recoverable slopes. So if there's a slope that goes down and a car can't recover and come back up, we put a guardrail there. If there's roadside objects that it needs to protect vehicles, like the sign structure posts, you have guardrail on top, in front of that. And then also we base it on crash history. So if there's a lot of crashes in a particular area for some reason, we put guardrail there, and we have analysis, a crash analysis that kind of looks at that. And so the traffic engineers tell us where to put it. So we have several guardrail locations, and if I could show you the picture, you can see where exactly we're installing the guardrail. And then other project features, we have intelligent transportation systems, ITS. So the sign structures that are installed, we installed 3 new ones, and we have some existing ones. They have dynamic signing. These sign structures are located about every half mile. They'll have eventually advisory speeds. It'll tell you when that part-time shoulder is open or closed. And then at the west end, there's where we had, I think in the eastbound direction, we had those manual signs where it said to zipper merge. We will have that in the westbound direction, but these signs will be monitoring traffic and looking at volumes, and when it's required, these signs will go on and tell you when to zipper merge. We also installed more traffic cameras for monitoring the corridor. We have traffic data stations, like I mentioned. It monitors the traffic volumes for those ramp meters and the dynamic zipper merge. We also built a noise wall, stormwater facilities, and we are going to be installing landscaping here soon. So going specifically into what a part-time shoulder, FAQs. So the part-time shoulder is another tool to help us ease congestion. So in the westbound direction, the shoulder lane is 13 feet wide, and it extends about 1.5 miles from 164th to I-205. All drivers, including transit, will be able to drive on this part-time shoulder to access I-205 northbound when the electronic display or signs indicate is open to traffic. And I have a nice little graphic here of how the signs look. They're already installed, but I think the electronic part is covered. It's a white sign, and it has, 205 North Shoulder Lane. We have a traffic management center in the Vancouver building. It's a room full of monitors, where we have our traffic management center monitoring traffic, watching traffic cameras. And so they'll be able to focus in on 14 and use these cameras to monitor the shoulder lane for incidents. And they can use that to open and close the lane remotely. The lane will use those dynamic signs overhead, which indicates when the lane is open or closed for travel. So how does the lane work or turn on? When the traffic volumes reach the threshold needed to activate an additional lane, the management center that I talked about will use the traffic cameras to they'll first conduct a visual inspection of the shoulder to ensure it's clear of debris, it's clear of any stalled traffic before they open it. And they'll open it during peak hours based on the traffic volumes that they're seeing through their data. Once the lane is cleared, the technician will activate the shoulder lane. So this overhead sign will display a green arrow and it'll say open, and it said exit only northbound. And that will indicate when you can get into that lane to drive in that shoulder. If it's closed, you'll see it'll say closed on the signs and it have a big red X. And so that'll indicate that the lane is closed. And we have a yellow arrow that will let you know when it's kind of like a regular yellow signal when the lane is about to close, or if maybe some incident happened and you have to get out of the lane. So you just have to use caution if you see a yellow arrow. And what happens if there's an emergency in the lane? In the event of an emergency or a vehicle that's blocking that shoulder lane, as I mentioned, you'll see the overhead sign will have a red X over it and it'll say it's closed. And it'll stay that way until the problem can be cleared. We have an incident response team which patrols the 14 corridor, and they can respond to the incidents quickly and keep the traffic moving. And then, of course, I mentioned we have those paid emergency pullouts that are located outside the shoulder for that can be used for if in case there's a collision, people can pull over and stuff. Why can't the lane be open 24/7? The extra lane should not be needed 24/7. During non-peak hours, 3 lanes is all that's needed. And you can travel, north or south I-205 or continue along westbound 14 using the 3 available lanes without needing that extra lane. So it'll be closed. And during that times when the shoulder lane is closed, the shoulder can be used for, for various reasons, like if you have a stall or if you have flat tires or collision. So it'll act like a normal shoulder. And then can transit use this lane? So buses can use this lane to access both northbound and southbound. There is a little merge at the end that they can go to so that they can go southbound if they need to. And they can use this lane at all times. They don't plan to, but if it's congested and the lane is not open for some reason, they can still use it. And they can, like they have been in the past, they can enter that part-time shoulder directly from a dedicated bus lane. They just drive right on there and they don't even have to stop for the ramp meter. I think that's how they're functioning right now. They're not even stopping for the ramp meters. And then remaining schedule. So we only have a few things left to do before we can fully open the freeway to traffic and be fully operational. Our goal here is to open that 3rd westbound lane. We've been very anxious and impatient for the contractor to finish work so we can open that 3rd lane. But unfortunately, activities have to happen in a certain sequence. So first, we needed to install irrigation. There's some irrigations along the wall that testing was recently completed. They needed to place topsoil. They were working on that now. They might be complete. And then just yesterday, they started installing the guardrail. That will take several weeks, but we made sure that westbound is priority. So as soon as they're done with installing the guardrail in the westbound direction, that third lane will be opened. And then to put that fourth lane into operation, which is the part-time shoulder, what needs to happen is a longer sequence of work. They were pulling fiber and wiring to electronic lane displays, the signs on the sign structures. That was completed last week. And then they started commissioning the electronic lane display and the signs. So I'm not a ITS engineer, but from what I understand, you know, they test the equipment. If there's something wrong with it, they have to fix it. And unfortunately, there's a few pieces that need to be replaced when they did the initial testing. But after that initial testing is, you know, everything's working okay, there will be a 20-day burn-in period where they'll have the variable message signs lit, and they'll have some message, and I'm not exactly sure how they do it, but it'll be lit for 20 consecutive days. And once that's done, that's when we can open the lane. But if something goes wrong during that 20 days, the 20-day period starts all over again. So we are hoping that this will all be done by the end of October, and we can get that shoulder lane open, but it really depends on all of the testing and how that proceeds. And then last, we have seeding and plantings. So we have certain windows in the contract when you can plant and when you can seed. So the seeding window began September 1st, will end in October 1st. So right now they are placing seed down. And then there is a landscaping window, which goes from October 1st through March 1st. We have thousands of plants, and they're going to try to do their best to get all those plants planted within that planting window. And then we have a 1-year plant establishment period after that. So if the plants die or if the weeds comes up, we have a weed control plan as well. They will, you know, spray for weeds, pull up weeds, they'll replace plants. So we have that 1-year establishment period after that. So that's actually all for 14. And I know I was asked to speak on upcoming projects in the area as well. And right now there is for 2025, there is no other program projects in the area. Our preservation, we are funded at 40% of what we need for preservation. And they did a lot of, you know, priorities, looking at what really needs to be preserved. There was nothing in this area. I think we had a lot of ramps paved this past year. So right now we don't have anything currently on the books. Okay, and I'm seeing somebody's, I'm getting time. Do I have time for a few questions?
Well, we're 3 minutes over now.
Okay,
So maybe we can share your email address,
sure.
and we can probably get that information to all of our
Okay,
homeowners here. So
perfect.
sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you.
You did a good job.
She came in with this beautiful presentation for you to show you, and we just couldn't get it to work this morning, so we apologize. But what I'm gonna do is edit the presentation into the recording that we have, that we're making right now of this. So that will go out to all of you and on our Facebook page. So let's move forward with our City of Vancouver homeless update, and Jamie Spinelli's here to talk to us about that.
Hello.
Is that loud enough? Very good.
You want it louder? I can make it louder.
I just want to make sure everybody else can hear it. I'm gonna sit, I think.
I'm on my feet all day.
My name is Jamie Spinelli. I'm the homeless response manager for the city of Vancouver. I don't believe I've actually spoken at this neighborhood association meeting before, so I feel like I gotta give like the entire spiel. There are some kind of main projects that the homeless response department at the city has been working on, is working on. One, we have the city's heart team, homeless assistance and resources team, which is essentially like our own outreach team, but multidisciplinary, so that we've got some folks who do street outreach, homeless outreach, connect people with services, etc. We've got someone out of the public works department. Her role at the city or on the team is to visit camps all day long and assess them for cleanup, sanitation, and hygiene needs. But she's kind of a magical unicorn, so she also does the outreach and engagement component, help getting people into treatment, shelter, housing, things like that. And then she coordinates all the cleanup efforts that are required. That could be very small. Some camps do a great job of keeping up their own space, so she just drops off trash bags and we make sure that they're picked up. And that could, but it could also, you know, be a large scale temporary move out of an encampment. If you've seen the one down on like Burbridge Creek, for example, near Andreessen, that requires a move out, typically about every 4 weeks or so. So Sheila is who does those, and then we've got 2 police officers on the team. Again, they lead with outreach and enforcement, and their enforcement or outreach and engagement, but their enforcement typically looks like citing people into community court. Community court is a specialty therapeutic court, very similar to drug court, mental health court, veterans court. And the purpose of that really is to kind of give a nudge to people who might be a little stuck and not prioritizing accessing resources at any given time. So if they're charged with what is typically known, you know, to be related to homelessness, crimes related to homelessness, is often camping, storage of property, trespassing, those very low level things. They go to community court, which is held at a space outside of the courthouse. It's over on 4th Plain near Stapleton. All the service providers in town really are there, and people are essentially kind of mandated to engage in services that will help them exit homelessness. So the heart team officers really, I mean, they do like 98% of the citing into community court. All officers can cite in, but it's typically R2. So that team is kind of managing unsheltered homelessness while we don't have enough shelter capacity. And we'll probably continue to do so until we have enough. And then that leads to the next thing that we do, which is we've been increasing shelter capacity since December of 2021. And that started with the establishment of Safe Stay communities. So we now have 4 of those. If you've never seen them, they look like little tiny home villages. We've got 4 of them kind of all over town. The infrastructure on all of them is pretty much the same. They all have 20 units. They serve individuals and couples, no kids at these sites. And the goal is just to provide a more humane alternative to living outdoors, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, and to provide the support they need to exit homelessness for a long-term solution. And I think that they've proven beneficial. I know Ann passed these out. There's some outcomes, which I can go over here in a little bit. So we got 4 of those sites, all run by nonprofit providers here locally. We've got 1 46 in Maine, 1 right in the middle of downtown, 1 at 51st Circle over by the YMCA, and the other on 4th Plain near Stapleton, right in the parking lot of the Op Center. Actually, our 4th site, our 4th site is on Washback property. Super appreciative for that partnership. So those are the shelter sites that we have. We also have a safe parking site. That's a partnership with C-Tran. Currently, that's a property that they own that was not being utilized. That opened as a COVID response, but has remained because it's still a need. And that's for individuals and households experiencing homelessness, but living in a vehicle, whether that's a car, truck, trailer, RV. If it's got wheels and can pretty much be contained, people can live in them, they are living in them. And it's a way that they can have a kind of a safe, stable space to be that is also supported by nonprofits, and other service providers who come on site, where they're not having to move around all the time, have their vehicle towed, so they can kind of launch from stability versus what is very unstable out on the streets. And that's got 50, I think it's 58 parking spaces. We typically have about 80 individuals living out there, and that site does serve children. We've got typically anywhere between like 11 and 15 children on site between some of the vehicles. I think those are the sites, right? So then in November, we declare a state of emergency because while the homeless numbers over the last year, the unsheltered specifically, has not grown, the impacts of unsheltered homelessness have grown significantly. So fentanyl, just like with any other part of the community, housing community is experiencing it as well. It has hit the homeless community in a pretty large way. So I'm part of a small group that kind of tracks the number of folks who pass away experiencing homelessness, as well as in supportive housing programs. And that number has increased drastically. So as of, what did I just say the other day? Through the month of August, we've had 34 deaths since the last homeless memorial. We're losing about 5 people a month, so 1 a week at least is where we're at. And half of those are due to overdose death. So yeah, it is done. It's pretty awful. So that's just one of the impacts. All of the things that we've talked about today put a pretty significant kind of strain on city services, most specifically though emergency services. So it's very high utilization of law enforcement, which I mentioned earlier. It's something like a quarter of patrol's time is spent on unsheltered homelessness specifically. And that's with 2 dedicated officers. The fire and AMR constant, those overdoses, in addition to just the very high kind of physical challenges that people have, with disability, illness, things like that. So the goal with the emergency was to be able to address it as rapidly as we can with some additional resources. City government tends to, well, I think all government, it works pretty slowly, and that's on purpose for good reason, although I did used to be frustrated with that coming from the nonprofit sector. But I do understand that there is a purpose for the government to move slowly. But it sometimes is a hindrance when you're dealing with something of this kind of with impacts of this magnitude. So the emergency allows us to move a little more quickly with some things, contracting with vendors or contractors, things like that. So one of the strategies we're utilizing to address that emergency, keeping in pace with what we have been doing, is creating additional shelter capacity at a greater scale. So the safe stays, we've really got proof of concept there. They're very successful. But at 20 units, that's not touching, it's not making much of a dent. We've still got, I think, between 600 people living unsheltered. That's just within city limits. It's closer to 700 countywide. So we're looking at building a bridge shelter. It's called a bridge shelter. A lot of people get confused by this. They think I'm putting a shelter under a bridge, and we're not doing that. It's just intended to bridge the gap for people, bridge someone from homelessness to housing, or just homelessness to the next stop on their journey, because it's not necessarily an apartment for everyone. One of the things that we're seeing these days with all of those challenges that folks are coming to us with, they're a little more complex these days. Folks are moving from tent to apartment and then rapidly losing that apartment because they really did not have the stability and skill and support needed to sustain it. So that's really the hope of these shelter spaces. And the bridge shelter is just intended to do that on a larger scale, as well as reduce some of the impacts of what we're seeing outside, reduce the drain on emergency services. We have just recently proposed a location that we're doing community engagement on, so this is actually great timing. The old Nadenov building over kind of near the mall, if anybody's familiar with that, that building is sold. We are looking to purchase it.
And I believe we're gonna have the first part of community engagement over by the end of November. We're gonna be scheduling some in-person and virtual community information sessions. And in this phase of engagement, we're really looking for, are there potential challenges, issues, et cetera, that would stem from the shelter being there or just a defect with the property? We live in the Pacific Northwest, so there are times when there's like 9 months out of the year that a property is underwater. That will not work. So these are the things that we're looking to hear from the community, the surrounding community, but the community at large. And then council will kind of make their decision on whether or not they'll be purchasing that property. Should be sometime by the end of the year. But engagement around whether or not it's used for the shelter should be decided right around the end of November. That shelter, we're looking at 100 up to 150 beds. I've been talking with capital projects folks at the city, and they've hired a very nice man, which is fortunate for me because he's like letting me down very gently. We might not be able to get a full 150 beds and do it very well. It might be 100 beds. But either way, we're trying to serve 150 people. That shelter will have a medication assisted treatment program inside of it to address the addiction challenges that I mentioned earlier. Medication assisted treatment, for those who do not know, is it's medication for opioid use disorder. So Suboxone, methadone, Vivitrol, and we want to embed that integrated into the shelter, which has not been done here before, because we know that that is statistically the best way to get people healthy again, immediate access to treatment. And immediate access to inpatient treatment is basically non-existent here. So that's the goal for that space. I have no idea where I'm at on time. Have I just been talking super fast?
Okay.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. So when someone comes to treatment, do you ever do a background check on where they are from? Louisiana, Alabama, Portland, Arizona? Because it will probably be less expensive to drive them in a limo back to where they are in their state than the support systems that we keep supporting. And believe me, I am very empathetic about this. I understand. I work for nonprofits. But I know that I've talked to many police officers that say they don't even live here, they're not here. They should be back to where they originally started from. And help really the citizens of Clark County and not Portland, because we understand that it's a hangover. We're getting there.
So that's a very common question, common belief. My team has done our own unsheltered count for the last 2 summers. And we do a bit more of a deep dive with folks than what Counts for the Homeless typically gets on their point in time count. And we also look up our own information on people who give us their information. We also do that when people want to be referred into any of our shelters. So we do look up, yes ma'am, we do. Because our shelters are funded solely with city taxpayer dollars, no county, state, fed. What I can tell you is the people who are coming into our sites, they're city residents. They're from the city, they've been homeless in the city. Even if they weren't born here, they've been here for 5 years, 10 years. In addition to that, just citywide, the folks who are living outside and maybe even not trying to get into shelter, the number 1 location that folks not from Vancouver city limits was elsewhere in Clark County, like by far.
Wow.
After that, it was elsewhere in the state of Washington. And then after that, it was across the river. And that was like 8%.
And do you help them get identification, so if they want to have someplace to have an address or someplace to have these centers?
Yes, we do all of that.
Go deep dive on what they can also get from their Social Security.
Yes, and I'll tell you that I'm kind of biased, but my team is better at any other outreach team in town at that. That's what I'll say. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed that there's nothing on here about winter hospitality overflow shelters.
Yeah.
Is that because it's part of Council for the Homeless, or is it just something that is not considered important anymore?
Oh, no, I definitely wouldn't say it's not important. This, update that Ann passed out, so every single month I give an update on, just for council's benefit, on what we've done to address the emergency specifically. Cause there's a team, there's like a document that guides what we do, that has a lot of strategies. The winter hospitality overflow and the SOS shelters, was certainly super helpful, very important. They do incredible work, especially with so many volunteers. It's just not necessarily part of the emergency strategy. That's part of the standard system, homeless crisis response system. And everything that we're doing here was kind of in addition to, and those are largely county funded. So I typically try not to report on that.
I don't think the county's done, and those of us who work in those consider it to be an emergency program because it's from the middle of November until middle of. March.
Certainly, it's certainly an important.
Shit city here.
Mm-hmm. Just not a civil emergency is what I'm trying to just, delineate, there is a difference between an emergency situation and like a declared civil emergency. And so that's what I'm talking about, but it's certainly very important.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
So these are hugely complex issues, and I'm
Yeah.
sure your staff spends a lot of time in firefight mode.
All day.
But those few moments when you can back up and project and think about, maybe a little optimistic and a little realism. When did we reach the inflection point where we start, how many years out, wherever, do we reach an inflection point where there's enough housing, enough mental health help, and enough transition that we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel?
I think that we're in a place where we can start to see some visible change, probably in five years. I think that, I think like heading out of the woods, not necessarily out of the emergency, because that's really just about, kind of emergency services. I think probably 10, honestly. I think probably 10. I think that if we do not handle it in this way now, we will 100% end up like all the other big cities that no one in Vancouver wants to be like. We will look like Portland, San Francisco, Seattle, because it is, while the impact is great, the number is actually, it's actually it's manageable if we do what we need to do. But we did not, as a whole county, as a community, we did not build enough housing. We did not increase shelter capacity. Prior to 2021, shelter capacity was not increased in a meaningful way in like 30 years. And that's as population continues to grow. So we are trying to catch up rapidly.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. You can go ahead. She's walking up here.
Okay, good. I noticed that the proposals are already in for who might manage.
Yes.
The bridge shelter.
Yes.
Are those, whoever submitted the proposals, will that become public knowledge, or will we only know who the city chooses to run it?
No, you should be able to see, eventually you will be able to see who submitted proposals. I don't know if procurement allows the proposals to actually like be out in the light of day themselves. I have no idea. I'd have to ask
I'm just
procurement about
curious, just
that.
because we've had various levels of success, with,
Mhm.
other entities, and so I just was curious if the public could see.
Mhm.
Yeah. who-
I believe so, as long as procurement says that's okay. I can tell you there's only a couple.
I imagine, well, it's a really short window, that was confusing also.
Yeah, look, it's an emergency. Okay, and you got something?
Go ahead, Ann. I was just gonna introduce our mayor, Ann.
Last minute questions?
Anything else? I can hang out for a bit.
We have one more after Ann.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a minute and a half. Ann McEnany, the mayor for the city of Vancouver. You have the mayor's update. This is my weekly that I prepare after our Monday night meetings. Just a couple items. On the very top of the front page is the list of all of the boards and commissions that we had openings for. We have 26 boards and commissions, and right now we have 6 of them there, including the library board, which is a very unique, and it's been a long time since we had an opening on the library board, but there's an opening there. You've heard about all the different items for the police. We have a new city manager. It talks about the tiered water utility rates there that will go into effect. On the back side, it talks about the I-5 bridge. I'm sure you're aware, we're building a bridge this Friday. Over 1,000 pages of the draft supplemental EIS will be published. We have 60 days to comment on those 1,000 pages. So they will put it on the internet in sections because it's so large and it has a lot of graphics. The other piece on the back of this, you'll see that we're asking a group to do a feasibility study on a performing arts facility, small, 600 to 800. And then lastly, next year is our 200th birthday. 1825, the city was founded, so we'll have our bicentennial next year. And you'll start hearing all the information and get ready for the big parade down the street. Okay, thank you so very much.
Okay, we have one more speaker, and it's gonna be Liz Erickson, briefly discussing solid waste, and we got some fun stuff coming up for you, I think, this weekend.
It is this weekend. Hi, so fast. Hi, I'm Liz Erickson. I work for the city in our solid waste department. It's garbage and recycling. And your amazing neighborhood association leaders are hardworking volunteers that have brought together another annual neighborhood cleanup. It is this Saturday, 8:30 along Rivershore Drive. And you can come and bring all the things that you don't want in your house anymore. So if you've got like bulky items that don't fit in your garbage, if you have scrap metal that can be pulled apart and the neighborhood associations get the proceeds from the scrap metal recycling, it's just a little bit, but it's something. And yard debris, all sorts and kinds of yard debris. You have to bring it down to Riverside Drive yourself, but sorry, Rivershore. So it'll be, the trucks from Waste Connections will be there from 8:30 to 12:30 on Saturday. It'll be beautiful weather, and you may run into a neighbor or two. You can probably meet some garbage drivers, which are pretty awesome, the guys that drive these trucks. They love doing these events. And for a time between about 9 and noon, Habitat for Humanity will be there to divert reusable items that they're able to take. It's a dynamic situation. They'll take what they can. And you can also just bring stuff that hopefully they will be interested in. I've got some flyers on the back table there about different kind of recycling disposal options. I want to point out to you our amazing AmeriCorps member that has just joined our team today. Her name's Kristen. If you have any interest in AmeriCorps, it is an amazing program, and we are so lucky to have them help us serve. And they help us deliver a lot of these programs to the neighborhood. So hopefully you'll see her around.
Okay, are you going to about the concerns for recycling?
Yes. So I've got, on the table there, we have free recycling classes. Recycling 101, how to use your curbside recycle cart correctly. And just put the right things in it at the right time. And we also have free classes on organics. If some of you have the curbside organics cart, the yard debris and food scraps. That's working really well. The place that we take our yard debris and food scraps, they say Vancouver's material is some of their best. So if you're using that, good job. Recycling, what we hear from the facility that's just out on West Van, or out at West Van by Vancouver Lake, you can take a tour. I've got cards on the table. You can let me know. We can get a tour set up. It'll blow your mind. And the biggest material problems we have there, the stuff that people are putting in recycle carts that does not belong, are plastic bags and film. It just doesn't belong in there. You can take those back to the grocery store where you got it. And we get a lot of food contaminated items. So if you ever have any kind of to-go packaging for your food, a friend of mine used to say, if you got your food to go, it's to go in the garbage when you're done with it. None of the to-go material are recycling. And compostable materials that say made out of compostable materials, it's made out of plants, that's all garbage. Our composter does not want it. It does not turn into good soil, and it is not recyclable. So please just throw it in the garbage, or just don't do the compostable stuff because our system doesn't want that at all. Another big problem that we get are batteries. It's really, really surprising. Batteries are in more and more and more things. They maybe are in your grandchild's rain boots, or they're in the greeting card, they're in your toothbrush. These kinds of embedded batteries are really hard to dispose of. They can't go in garbage, they can't go in recycling, because when they get compacted on their journey, they catch the trucks on fire. Or when they get to West Van where they're going, they get compacted and they start fires. It's really dangerous. So best to avoid batteries when you can, and then your next best option is to look up at how to recycle batteries properly. There's more and more places are locally around the area. If you live in like a townhome, a condo, an apartment, you could have a battery collection site on site. I've got flyers on the table there about proper battery disposal. So getting those out of the carts is a super smart thing to do. And those are our biggest problems. And I know all of you have questions about, what do I do with? So you want to take our Recycling 101 class. We have one next Wednesday, and we'll have more scheduled soon, and these are free classes. Everybody has more fun than they think they're going to have. Everybody learns something. And everybody goes home and they tell somebody they know or live with that, oh, we gotta do this better, or oh, we gotta stop doing this. So I hope to see some of you at these classes because they're fun and they're important. How about that? And I don't have time to take any questions. So I've got flyers on the table. Will you bring them back to me on Saturday? Yeah. And so I'm gonna hand this over to do the real meat and bones of your meeting here. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, I'm actually gonna bring up my co-chair, Joan, and Serena from Columbia River, yes. And these two are gonna hash it out, because I think I was pretty ornery with you guys today, and I apologize.
You did a great
Thank you. Even though, I could stand up here and hash it out with the two of them, I'm gonna be behind the scenes.
Yeah. All right, it's up to you guys.
All right, well, this has been a long evening. Hope that all of you got a lot of information from it and it's all benefit. Now, both of us have neighborhood association emails. So for all those people you want to contact, all the ones that you didn't get a question answered, what we want you to do is make sure you sign up for our emails. You can ask us and we can put all those questions in. And to be honest, we get the answers. We do. You know, as neighborhood leaders, we have the opportunity to make sure that you get that feedback.
Also, with everyone that came and all our speakers have emails, why can't you get the emails and then send it out to us instead of having all of us have to
Well,
email you for
because
them?
you know the
The
reason.
police, the city.
Right,
the
just so you know,
general
the
fund.
whole reason of having neighborhood leaders is because the city can't listen to all the people. So our job is to funnel to them.
All of
So,
them has said, take my email, all of them have said it, email us.
Yes.
So they haven't said, don't email us. They said, you can email us, we just need the email. So you could be.
but, okay, could you possibly answer all the emails from 600 people? They just can't do that. So I'm not saying that you can't send the information, I can forward it on, but the problem they have is they won't be able to respond. They still have a job. So that's our job. The only reason that we exist is to funnel that information.
Well,
So,
why would they not say you can email me like the gentleman Ryan did, said, well, you can email me, and I'll give you my address for the city. It would be very easy to do that because we are the people that pay the taxes instead of having it funneled for you. If you just give us the list, then we have the ability.
well, then they would just, this is probably not the right forum to have this discussion further. I can talk to you after this, right? I mean, because then
By
that
the
would.
way, City of Vancouver employees' email addresses are all public.
Yeah.
You just go to the website and you can get their email address. If you want to talk to Ryan, if you want to talk to, yeah, they're all public. And that's actually what Chief, Maury said tonight.
Right,
Just look them up.
Just look, remembering all the
Yeah.
names and what they
Yeah.
do.
I think why we want to collect email addresses is to, like, a couple reasons. We're gonna edit all of this and make sure you guys have a copy of this in the video. You get your minutes and you get your
your meeting notes and, oh, here's the cleanup date is coming. Yes, we do send out flyers.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, 50% of my neighbors on my street threw it away, didn't even know about it. Cause I was walking door to door, when you go to the meeting, go to the meeting.
So
So
we have a
that's,
subject on these are important numbers to know.
yeah, so, yeah, that's the main.
But they
and
had to
then-
bring their cards too.
Yeah.
Like Liz did, she was amazing. Yeah, she brought a card, so everybody could contact her. I'm not trying to prevent you from keeping Kansas City, because they're listed, but that is the purpose of having neighborhood leaders, just so you know. But anyway, so we are just, as Columbia River Neighborhood Association, we just have a treasurer report because it's all part of, Robert's rules for us to conduct a meeting. So we have a treasurer report that this is Carol Terrell. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. This, oh, there is close. Okay, I also want to say, I'm going to be at a dump thing. The recycling and whatever, because it's on my street. And so I'm going to be there. And I want to tell everybody here, if you can pass it along, do not come into River Shore on 148th, the little tiny street. Go down, clear down 164th and go down the hill and you get it, because the traffic goes that way. If you come the other way, you're gonna have to turn around and go that way, because with the big trucks, it's a one-way street. So you
So they're
can't,
saying enter at 140.
Yes,
Is that wrong?
the postcard said to enter on 148.
no, don't, that's the exit. Because
Postcard.
it goes the other
It was
way.
last year.
Yeah, we entered that way last year.
Yeah.
No, we've always
on
been-
164th
Well,
last
we'll
year.
make sure the signs are that way.
All right, just, it works that way really well. So that's it. Okay, my financial report is, whoops. Sorry. We started with $255. We have to pay insurance for the, and that was 120. A bank fee, of like $30, it charges $5 a month for inactive bank account unless we have to do something. And so we have $105 and 22 cents. I'm going with Old Evergreen Neighborhood Association, and Linda is our treasurer, and she can give us the treasurer's report.
Thank you. I am Linda Hegland, I'm the treasurer. I'm gonna hijack this for just like 30 seconds. I'm on the board of the Evergreen Arboretum with James Weber Evergreen Arboretum. And we are having an open house Sunday, October 13th, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. The Stanger House has been transformed and is still a work in progress. We've got pollinator gardens and blah, blah, blah. So I hope you all come. Treasurer's report. As 9/14/22, I had 21 on there, and that's wrong. We had $518.40. And we had signage expenses to Dode last year, $85.66, and we have a balance of $432.74. End of report. Thank you.
So I think, considering this has been an action-packed evening and packed with fabulous speakers, at this time, I think we can wrap up the meeting, call the meeting adjourned. It's a short, sweet meeting, but we had old business addressed with the Police's discussion of the trail, and we had some very, very informative community topics. So I will say good night for now. I think we can call this meeting adjourned. If you would be so kind as to help us collect the chairs and put it away, then we can leave the room tight, okay? Thank you. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Sure.